Hi, Mark Turner, President of the Gilroy Chamber of Commerce, and we are continuing our series, our Legislative Summit series online. And today we have with us Congressman Jimmy Panetta, and he's joining us to talk about a few things like we've done with so many other elected officials who've taken the time out of their schedule to join us and participate. So Congressman, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you being with us today.
Thanks, Mark. It's great to see you virtually, and I appreciate this opportunity to talk to you, but also say hello to all the community members there in Gilroy and Santa Clara County and northern San Benito County as well. But look forward to having these conversations. This is what it's come to, and unfortunate that I won't be able to go to the annual get-together that you normally do such a great job hosting and bringing people together. But I'm glad that we can at least, as we've had to do these days, pivot to this type of technology and having at least be able to have the conversations that are necessary for people to connect with one another and be informed about what's going on.
Indeed, and thankfully we have this type of technology that makes that work. So again, we do appreciate you being with us. Congress has been working on a number of stimulus packages. And the question I have to begin with is, what's the latest stimulus package that Congress is working on? And can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, definitely. It was funny. I just got off a 2-hour-long Democratic caucus call. As a Democrat, those are the caucuses that I'm a part of, and therefore we have conference calls probably about twice, sometimes 3 or 4 times a week. And obviously, we are working on the latest emergency relief package. In the past, we've passed 4 big packages. Obviously, the first one dealing with testing back in early March, the second one dealing with hospitals right after that, about March 13th. And then, of course, the massive one, the CARES Act, the largest stimulus package in our nation's history, $2.2 trillion. That was passed in late March. And then we did the extension of that act probably about 2 weeks ago. That was mainly focused on PPP, hospitals, and some testing funding as well. And now this week coming up, we are working on a bill that's basically similar, will have similar provisions along the line in that it will focus on state and local funding. It will focus on PPP. It will focus on our essential workers. It will focus on testing and contact tracing. And also more direct payments to individuals as well. This is basically in the works right now. It's Monday, the 11th of May, as we have this conversation. But I can say that these are in the works right now, and this bill will be presented sometime this week within the next couple days. And then we'll see how the negotiations go with the other party and whether or not they want to negotiate, whether or not we just vote on it and send it forward. That's all up in the air at this point. But I think the real focus on with the priorities being the funding to state and local entities, local municipalities, based on the fact that in the CARES Act, you had $150 billion to state and counties and cities. However, that money would only get directly funded to those counties that had over 500,000. And so to kind of give you a sense, St. Louis, Missouri didn't even get direct funding because they don't have a population of over 500,000. So all of the cities and counties that I represent on the Central Coast don't have over 500,000. Therefore, that was a priority for us, but it's also a priority for other Democrats and other Republicans all across this country, for the most part, to make sure that there is direct funding for those types of cities and counties with less than 500,000. I believe that's going to be the priority, the #1 priority in this bill coming up that you'll next hear about.
Well, good. I know that was probably one of the biggest frustrations that smaller communities were dealing with, knowing that the smaller communities didn't get that kind of money. So it's good to know that. How do you feel these stimulus packages are working out?
Look, I think the goal was to get them out the door as soon as possible, to get that funding out the door as soon as possible. Now, obviously, there was a lot of money getting out the door and a lot of people who needed that money. So there were some hiccups, no doubt about that, especially when it came to the Paycheck Protection Act. But I kind of want to give you a stat. So on a normal year, the Small Business Association deals with basically 60,000 loans for $30 billion in 1 year. Once again, 60,000 loans, $30 billion 1 year. The PPP, there were 1.6 million loans for $350 billion in 13 days. So there was a huge demand, understandably so, for a huge package that when there were some issues, there was no doubt about that, especially when it came to getting money who needed it the most. Those smaller businesses that didn't necessarily have the relationships with big banks or something like that, minority-owned, woman-owned businesses that needed some more attention. And so with the extension, another $310 billion on top of the $350 billion from the original PPP, then you had 310 additional. That now we're starting to hear people get the PPP loans, and it's starting to work out. So hiccups, no doubt about that. Our goal, though, was to get the money out as soon as possible. We did that, and we're continuing to make sure now it gets into people's pockets. The calls into our office are a little more relieved that they got the loans rather than panicked as it had been, understandably so, in the past few weeks. So it's coming along. Improvements need to be made, but that's exactly what this next bill will address, with the issues that we talked about, making sure there's direct funding to small cities and counties, make sure the PPP is improved, and then also probably re-up more direct disbursements directly to people. And so I think you're going to see those three areas do pretty well. Our agriculture, we actually did pretty well in regards to the amount of agriculture to our specialty crops. Using the CCC, we wanted to make sure that, we'd heard that commodity crops always got a lot of money, 16 billion, but our specialty crops here on the Central Coast were left out. Well, we got at least 3 billion in regards to that. So that's going to help on top of additional funding for direct purchases. So you had direct payments to our producers, but there's also direct purchases. So basically the USDA is going to be buying food directly from our farmers, and most of it's going to go to food banks, which I think is necessary, very necessary at this point. So overall, Mark, some issues, but I think we're getting there. And as this strategy that we're seeing to address this pandemic, as I've termed it, since there's really not a national unified strategy, it's federally funded, state mandated, locally executed. And I think if you look at it that way, I think it's slowly coming along. But also if you look at this pandemic, the word that I've been hearing over and over and been using is a patchwork. And it really is a patchwork. It's a patchwork of outbreaks. It's a patchwork of openings. It's a patchwork of testing. And I think you're seeing it become more regional. And I think we're going to continue to see it be more regional with the openings of the economy and whether or not, and that's going to be based on, you hope, the data and the doctors and the opinions that they provide as we go forward.
That's a good point. I know that I think you're right with regard to the regional openings and how that's starting to play out. I think that, this kind of one size fits all just doesn't work well. And regionally, people need to be able to decide for themselves what's the best way to open and make that work. We certainly, I'm seeing it here, I've been hearing more and more of our local businesses getting their PPP, but we're also hearing the frustration of those who are saying we can't even get open. And obviously we need to take that up with our county, Santa Clara County, and find out how we can't sort of, I say pressure, but find some ways of doing this safely with the right data and making sure that people are safe, but finding a way to make sure that the business community and those in our local business area can survive.
That's
For
right.
them now, it's a matter of survivability, and they are really struggling to get back on their feet. And with that, Congressman, where would you say we go from here with regards to helping our businesses?
Yeah, I think, it's a balance. Okay, it's a balance of the public health issue versus the economic health issue. And that's kind of where we're at this point. I do believe, it was funny, I had that Democratic call I was talking about, and I just got off the phone with Supervisor Wasserman. We did a check-in, as I've been doing with all the supervisors in my district. And we had this discussion. And I do believe that it can be very frustrating. I don't know if you saw this report on CNN today. In a town that's literally sits on the Virginia-Tennessee border, and literally a road divides them, a main street divides them. On one side of the street, in Tennessee, all the restaurants are open. but on the other side of the street in Virginia, they're all closed. So imagine the frustration there that's going on. But I think it's those types of issues that you have to use your common sense. But I do believe what gives us our sense on this pandemic is more information. And that's been the biggest problem, I truly believe, Mark, is that we don't have the data. We don't have enough data upon which we can make reasonable decisions, or at least we didn't. Now we're starting to get more data. Now we're starting to get more testing. Now we're starting to talk about contact tracing in order to contain this virus. And the thing is that, if you don't have a vaccine, that's the only way we're going to be able to see this disease, is through testing and contact tracing. And so the more of that you can employ, I believe that allows us to see and have the data, and therefore take those reasonable steps going forward to, that if you want people to come together, then we should know who has this disease and who doesn't. And I believe now testing is our only way out of it at this point. So with more tests, more data, more sensibility when it comes to opening up our economy. And I think we're there yet, and now it's starting to balance it. Now, the last thing you want to do, though, is make these decisions on, look, what I admit we're all feeling. We want to get back to normalcy. We want to open up our businesses. We're getting the itch. I was out on this weekend. It's Monday today. I was out this weekend driving around. There are a lot more cars on the road. We're sensing that. We get that. Now, so we get that urge, but let's just make sure that when we have that urge, that we act on data and reasonable policies going forward when it comes to that balance of our public health and our economic health as well. And so it's not a one or the other, okay? It can be both. We can protect our public health, we can open up, but it's got to be done based on doctors, it's got to be done based on data, and I believe we're getting to that point.
That's a good point. Finding that balance is very important. We're here with Congressman Jimmy Panetta. Done with our first session here. We'll be back in just a second.